Hello, everyone. My name is Janet, and I have got a special lady with me today. She is the author of the Carver Dimension. The Carver Dimension deals with Dr. George Washington Carver, a special man of that time, of the 1800s. He did so much to shape our world, yet we know so little about him. The thing that was so special about Dr. Carver, Benjamin Franklin, Nikola Tesla, Booker T. Washington, was that they had no modern equipment. They that made them brilliant because they were just going on what they had to use. And George Washington Carver he was a favorite of mine also because he was such a spiritual man and a kind man, and at that time he was a slave. So without further ado, I want to bring my special guest on, Kimberly, the author of The Carver Dimension. Kim, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you so much, Janet, for allowing me to come on your show.
And thank you so much, Kim, for coming. I really appreciate it. The first question I want to ask you was, what prompted you to write a book about a scientist from the 1800s?
Well, I always had a fascination with George Washington Carver. I remember when I was a kid in middle school, they would briefly talk about George Washington Carver, but they never really did go into great detail about all that he did. So, when I became an adult, I started doing more research and I started reading more about George Washington Carver. And I was really astonished about to hear about all the things that he created and he made. And he's such an integral part of society and America, and also around the world, because he did so many wonderful things to help others as far as agriculture. He was very smart, very gifted, and I just felt really compelled to tell his story, because his story is a very unlikely story, but it's a story that has a wonderful message, a message of hope and also of inspiration.
Well, thank you, Kimberly. That sounds good. And when I was a small child, we touched on it a little bit in school about these great scientists, but nothing in depth. But I understand that you're going to get deep in with Dr. Carver with as much information as you can tell us about his life. So, Kimberly, tell us about his early life.
Okay, well, I'll start off by telling you that he was born into slavery. He was born, no one knows the exact year of his birth, but he was born sometime around 1860, 1864, circa 1864 area. But like I said, no one exactly knows the exact year of his birth. He did not have a great, as far as we know, a great path coming into this world, because being born a slave, both of his parents were slaves, and before he was even a year old, he was orphaned. And basically, what happened after that point, the slave owners that had owned both of his parents, which were Mary and Giles Carver, they actually ended up taking George and his brother in, and basically keeping them as their own children, which was very rare at that time. George was often sick as a child. He had bouts with whooping cough, and had just had a lot of small ailments that really made it rough for him to be able to go outside. So he was not able to do any type of hard manual labor. So he was basically made to stay at home and help with laundry and cooking and just things that were done inside the house. And that's what he did for a long time, up until he got around the age of 12. That's when he decided to leave. I do know that the owners, which were Mary, I'm sorry, not Mary, but Sarah and Moses Carver, they did teach George how to read, which was a rarity at that time because, as you know, blacks were not able to read because they did not want blacks to be able to read. So that was a rarity at that time. He was actually taught from a black and blue speller dictionary on how to read. So by the time he was in his teens, he was able to read quite well. And so he loved to read. He was a voracious reader. He liked to read anything that he could get his hands on. And at the age of 12, he decided to leave because at that time he was supposed to go to school. The schools were segregated at that time, so he was not able to go to an all-white school. So he had to leave and go to a neighboring town, which was Neosho, and he left there. And after he left on his journey, he went to an all-black school and was adopted or taken in by a black couple called the Watkins. And they really molded George. They really helped him. They saw the potential in him and saw that he had a great and vast mind, and they really wanted to make sure that George had the best and that he was definitely taken well care of. There he received his first Bible from Mariah Watkins, and he would read that every day. He was a very spiritual person. I always felt that God and science were closely integrated. So that's pretty much the synopsis of his teen years.
Well, Kimberly, that sounds like a lot to overcome. I'm thoroughly impressed because those are a few things that I did not know about his life. And what about his parents? What happened with his parents?
Well, before George was even a year old, both of his parents were actually killed. His father, Giles, was a slave on the Moses and Sarah Carver plantation. And somehow, they're not exactly clear about it, but it is alleged that he was killed in a farming or logging accident. But no one knows that for sure. But he definitely did pass at an early age. I believe he was in his 20s when he died. His mother, Mary Carver, was also killed. This is a fascinating story. Before George was actually even a year old, some raiders from Arkansas had actually come in and raided the farm. And they came in and they stole George, Mary, and his younger brother James, and they took them for ransom. And so Moses and Sarah Carver had to basically hire some agents to try to find out who these raiders were, where they were, and what they wanted. So the story goes, they ended up having to pay a ransom fee, as well as, I believe, gifting them a racehorse in order to get George and James back. But unfortunately, with Mary Carver, she was never heard or seen from again, so they were not able to recover her. So they do assume that in the process of her being kidnapped, that she was actually killed in the process.
Oh, I'm so sorry. He seemed to have went through so much that today most of us could not go through all that and be a whole sane person. I mean, that was quite a bit to go through. If my internet goes down, I go to pieces. So can you imagine something like that happening to him, is with his parents and being shipped off to a new family and not knowing anybody and being sickly? I mean, that we humans, we go through quite a bit in this world. We really do. And tell us more, Kim. I'm interested.
Okay, well, certainly. Absolutely, just what you were saying, that definitely that's a lot for one person to go through, and that's why his story is so astonishing and so amazing. The fact that he basically was born into slavery, was orphaned by the time he was a year old, he was able to read. It's amazing that he was able to overcome all of those obstacles and still become a success, and that's why I wanted to write the story, because it can definitely show people that no matter where you come from, you can't get any lower than being a slave as far as society goes. That's the most degraded position that a human being could ever be in. And if you can overcome that great obstacle, you can pretty much overcome almost anything. And that's why I wrote the story, because I just felt like, I felt very compelled that this was a special person, that he was a special man, and he had such great faith to come from such grim circumstances. And just like you were saying today, we have issues and we have our own problems in today's society, but it's certainly not as bad as what these people had to endure, back in the 1800s and 1700s and so on and so forth, because they had to basically fight for their lives. Although we are facing some, terrible situations today as far as dealing with many different situations like human trafficking, organ harvesting, and those types of things, which are absolutely horrific. But getting back with George Washington Carver, even throughout his life, he was very spiritual. He always believed that God was there. We just had to basically tune in to him and be aware of his presence. His presence is everywhere, according to George, and he felt like science and God were basically all intertwined in one, Mother Nature. It's there, the frequencies are there. We just have to be like a radio and tune in and listen to guidance and listen to intuition and listen to all the things that the universe is trying to tell us.
Well, that's so fascinating, and I'm really lifted in my spirit right now, just listening to what you have to say. A man dealing with those circumstances, yet he's calling on God and getting answers, right away to his prayers and all. And we live in a time now where people are saying, well, there is no God. Well, whatever they believe is what they believe. But I'm with George Washington Carver. I know that there is a creator, and I know that he does care for mankind. Sometimes that we can't see all the wonderful things that he does for us. Is like the old saying, you can't see the forest for the trees. I mean, we can't see all the great things that he does for us. And when we look out of that third eye, that spiritual eye, we begin to see all the things that is done on our behalf each and every day. So, Kim, did he ever marry or have any children?
No, not as far as I know of. I did hear speculation that he did have a lady friend that he would talk to from time to time, and that kept him company. But as far as marriage, I don't think that George was really interested in marriage, because his work was his marriage. I find that with scientists, a lot of times, when people have great minds like George Washington Carver, Nikola Tesla, they're so enraptured in what they're doing, they're not really focused on relationships, because they kind of feel like that they would not be able to devote the time for a marriage, or to have children. So as far as I know, he was never married, and like I stated, he just was basically married to his work.
Absolutely amazing. Now, Kim, if I'm understanding it right, he gave away everything that he basically created. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. George Washington Carver always felt that he received his guidance and information from God, and he often felt like, since he received that free, he wanted to give it freely to everyone. He felt like there was no need to charge, because he was not charged to receive the information. And he was very spiritual. He would go into prayer every day, take walks in the woods, and he really felt connected to nature. He would nurse plants and flowers back to life. People would come by that had dying plants or dying flowers, and they would always come by to ask George Washington Carver to help bring their plants back to life, because he really knew how to work with plants. He was very very advanced in his knowledge at the time. He all accredited it to God. He would always say that that Mother Nature was basically a broadcasting system. We just had to tune in, and he often said that God actually talked with him. That God, he would ask God questions, and God would actually show him what he needed to be shown. And I believe that, for a man like George Washington Carver, the amount of inventions, the amount of products that he made was astonishing. I've actually counted it up, and just between the soybean plant, the sweet potato, and the peanut, there's got to be almost close to 1,000 different products that he made. And I do believe that he had a very vast, wonderful, excellent, beautiful mind, but I do feel that he did have power, or he did receive guidance and instruction from something divinely inspired, if you want to call that God, or you want to call it the universe, to be able to produce that many items. It's just, it's not something that comes very easily. So he was definitely, in my opinion, divinely inspired.
Wonderful. Kim, what amazes me so about this man is the wonderful attitude he had towards all of it. It seems like that his attitude was positive throughout his whole entire life. And I think that really can inspire us to be positive like that, to aspire to something greater, and to know that the Creator does speak to us, as you just said, that we have to be in tune to that connection. And the way that I believe that we get in tune to it is through nature and through loving the Creator and wanting to know more about Him, and reading His Word, which is under attack today. The scriptures are under attack as we speak, but just know that we do have a Creator and He does love us. And I've just gotten so much out of this story that you've been telling this afternoon, and there were so many of those scientists back then that had no modern technology to work with, not even a decent telescope. We're talking Booker T. Washington, Nikola Tesla, Einstein, for instance, Benjamin Franklin, and we're going to do stories on all of these men, because we can't stop telling enough stories about these men, because they were so great, especially during the time that they lived in. Now, Kim, could you tell us about, did he do his own recipes for different things, and are we still using them today?
Yes, absolutely. George Washington had many recipes. He was definitely, indeed, a great cook, and actually, he did have a cookbook that came out that was a hodgepodge, or a combination of many different dishes, ranging from desserts to salads to dressings to toppings. So he knew his way around the kitchen very well. So he did have many different recipes to share with the world, and of course he never charged for any of those. And he was very smart when it came to learning how to mix herbs and different ingredients, because not only was he a scientist, but he was also a botanist as well. So he wore many different hats. Also, a lot of people didn't know that George Washington Carver was also a painter. His paintings were so great they actually got shown at the state fair. He was not only was he a painter, he was also a musician. He also played piano as well. So he was very multi-talented, and he was definitely a Renaissance man of his time. So he has so many things. I mean, we could go on for hours and hours talking about all the things that he could achieve, that he did achieve, and that he was actually good at.
Amazing. It's just really amazing to me, all the things that you are telling us about this great man. And Kim, if there's anything else that you would like to tell us about Dr. George Washington Carver, please tell us.
Okay. Well, basically, what I really wanted to emphasize was on George Washington Carver's personality. He was very well respected, very well liked, and admired. People all over the world sought for his advice. I mean, I'm talking from Theodore Roosevelt, President Roosevelt, to Nikola Tesla, to Gandhi, to Thomas Edison, who offered him a staggering sum to come work for his laboratory, which he turned down because he felt that money was not something that he was really after. He just really wanted to do God's work, and he really wanted to help others. But so many people really went to him for his expertise. Even Joseph Stalin went to George Washington Carver for his expertise and learning how to take care of the farming. And everyone from all over the world really looked to him because he was such a respectable person. He had such a positive attitude, and even though with all of his accolades of being a scientist, being a botanist, he never looked down on people. He never made people feel bad about themselves. People described him as being a person that would really intensely listen to you. So if you had a conversation, he would stop doing what he was doing, look you in the eyes, face you, and genuinely listen to what you had to say, because he felt that everyone mattered. And I think that that's what we need today as people, is to feel that we matter and to have a positive attitude. As the saying goes, your attitude your attitude goes with your altitude. It keeps you. If your attitude is bad, you're not going to fly very high. It determines your altitude. So if you're a positive person, then you can fly high and soar like the eagles and achieve the things that you want. And I think that with George Washington Carver, he decided to develop a positive attitude and continue to have that, and that's how he was able to achieve so much.
Well, Kimberly, I am so inspired and amazed by this story that you are telling us. And could you tell us, Kimberly, where can we get your book?
Okay, well, the book is called The Carver Dimension by Kimberly Athena. The place that you can purchase the book is actually directly at my website, which is www.beyondouruniverse.com. Again, that address is www.beyondouruniverse.com.
Well, that sounds good, Kimberly. I'm definitely going to get my copy. And I also want to tell the audience that we will be doing book reviews. And if you have a book that you've written and you want us to review it, you just send us the synopsis in the email, and I will give you my email, and I will put it down below in the description box. It's blue, BLUEV 9206 at gmail.com. And all you have to do is just contact us through the email and send us the synopsis and where we can get your book, and how much the book cost, and we'll talk about it on our show. And all I want to say to Kimberly is thank you so much for being here with us this evening, and we hope to do more shows with you on more scientists such as Nikola Tesla, Benjamin Franklin, Booker T. Washington, Albert Einstein, and so many more, because we all need this information. It's inspiring, and there were so many things that I didn't even know until she began to tell me about this man, Dr. George Washington Carver. Of course, I've always heard about him, and we touched on it in grade school, but I had no idea that all this information was here. So again, I want to thank you, Kimberly, and I want to thank the audience.
Thank you so much for allowing me to be here, Janet. I've definitely enjoyed this discussion that we had, this interview, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you.